Hurry Up Gary med Crass från dubbel-LP:n Stations of the Crass. Det här med små oberoende etiketter, det låter ju bra, men fungerar det verkligen? Är man oberoende?
Very few of the so-called independent labels are independent labels. I mean, a large majority of the so-called independent labels are actually owned by people like EMI. You know, and they're just a front because now there is a market in independent music. So what the big companies have done is set up little labels, calling them independent, so that they can then use all of the, say, the independent charts or the independent network to promote their music, because they know on the sort of ABBA scale there's no chance of it being a big seller, but certainly on the independent level they will sell. So a large amount of the independent charts now are actually full up of EMI and Warner Brothers and Polydor and all the rest of them.
Det finns en marknad för independent labels, oberoende etiketter alltså, just nu, och många av dessa småbolag ägs av de stora multijättarna, vilket ju inte gör dem oberoende. Men de stora bolagen kan på så sätt använda sig av de listor och olika kanaler som finns för oberoende etiketter. Men i så fall, finns det verkligen en oberoende scen i England idag?
Yeah, I think there does. I mean, the music press has done all it can to sort of disguise that existence. It's always attempted to promote and create a movement that has the same ideas, has the same sort of basic reasons behind it, but then it will push it forward and say, well, this is what's happening now. And along with that will come, this year's commercial punk bands, and everyone will say they're the real punk, this is the real thing that's happening. But beneath that, there really is a genuine independent circuit. There's independent bands, independent labels, people who are genuinely underground who are never touched by the music press, never touched by the commercial scene, because they don't want anything to do with it. They're not interested in that at all. There's a lot at stake for someone like EMI, who, on the one level, their record industry is threatened by the new independent bands. On another level, the social ideas that are being introduced by the independent bands, sort of pacifist, anarchist, whatever ideas, genuinely threatening people like EMI, who are one of the biggest arms producers in this country. Obviously, EMI aren't going to want bands like us becoming successful on two levels. We affect their record sales and we affect their arms sales, or the atmosphere in which they make their arms sales. So on two levels, and then that's the case with most of the big record companies, that they're all directly or indirectly connected with the arms trade.
Crass Records har ju alltid hållit låga skivpriser. Varför det då?
For obvious reasons, that people don't have much money. Since we've been producing records, we feel that we should sell records so we can do the things we need to do, which is to go out and gig and produce more records by other people, produce handouts, whatever, all the activities that we do. We feel it's justified that we should take something from making records to do that. But we haven't improved our lifestyle because of being a successful band. We don't eat any better, or we don't have better facilities for all of that. And that's why we can sell records, because we don't have 3 Mercedes-Benz out there, and we don't drink Southern Comfort in the evening. We drink tea.
That's how much it costs to put out a record. We put out our records at how much it costs us to produce them. The discrepancy between the price that we sell our records at and the price that standard record would cost, which is about £2. I mean, ours are about £2 cheaper on an album. Represents profit as far as the company is concerned who's putting it out. So, I mean, and they have all sorts of middlemen and entrepreneurs, and they spend an enormous amount of money on promotion and all that sort of shit, which you don't need.
Well, you imagine the sort of, drugs bill of sort of a band like The Clash must be enormous. Well, that's what people are paying for when they buy one of their albums. They're paying for their sort of coke habits, and we're not asking people to pay for our habits.
Punk started as some sort of statement from people in the street and on a sort of street level. That wasn't financially viable. So bands were produced, brought up, and cultured by the main record labels, by the business, to synthesize what was happening outside the business. If an industry is based on promotion, which the record business is, if you're promoting something, if you have to promote it, then you're trying to sell something to someone that they don't know about or that they don't want. You're trying to encourage people to buy.
Do they owe us a living med Crass. Vidare nu om kompromisser, distribution och vikten av att hitta alternativ.
You have to make enormous compromises because the people who buy the records buy them because they hear them on Radio 1, because they're numbed out by the places that they live in, the shit that they hear on the radio, the shit that's all around them. So you've got to compromise, and you've got to make your stuff equally as shitty as all the rest of the stuff that's around. And we aren't doing that. I mean, we're putting out what we believe in. So obviously it's not going to go onto that market because we aren't saying, you know, that you should go out and buy a tin of baked beans and you should buy a car and you should have a sort of straight job. We're not saying that.
There are alternative ways to doing something, and that's what we try to do, not because of doing something differently, simply because everything that's been offered in everything that you do or try to do is corrupt, you know, and it's short-sighted, it's unimaginative, you know, and there's so many areas where you can express yourself, not only in the music or the artwork or the rest of it, but you can express yourself in your whole method of application, the way you go about life, the alternatives you try to see around the usual accepted monetary and style and all the rest of it method of doing something, which means sod all. It doesn't give anything to anybody, you know. And I think a lot of people have been encouraged by what we do, not just the sound or the words, but encouraged by the way we've done it. You know, we have done it from nothing, and we do still work on a sort of nothing basis because we don't, you know, because of what we want to say and do. And I think people have been encouraged to do that and realise that they can do it from nothing, you know, and that's what's important. People have started their own labels, have started their own magazines, and they've had very little in their pocket. They've had very little imagination. So they think until they really apply themselves, and then they see there are ways of doing things. It may not be good for, you know, the first time off, but it grows, you know, and you begin to learn a lot more about yourself, and that's really good and exciting.
I think what's happening is that, I mean, like last year there was sort of mass rioting all around the country. And that, I mean, that's basically because we live in a society that doesn't care. And that if enough people cared, then firstly, those sorts of situations wouldn't need to exist. And secondly, the system that creates those sorts of situations doesn't need to exist. And only through sort of a personal demonstration of caring, you know, can it mean anything? It doesn't mean anything to sort of sit at home and think things like that. You have to get out and say that you care. And on that level, I mean, I sort of see a lot of what we're trying to do as trying to prevent the country being forced into a sort of a bloody revolution, which is on the cards, because the richer are getting richer and the poorer are getting poorer. And no one cares. Whereas if people can be made to care or can be presented with a life that's got some sort of meaning, then they're going to find a creative way of dealing with the problems and something will grow.